Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. I wanted to tell you that you suck. Well, but that's okay because I suck too. And as a matter of fact, everybody we know that's a human being sucks. And if that offends you, then you're probably offended at the Bible because it's exactly what it says. That our right way of doing things, the Bible calls it righteousness, our right way of when we decide what's good and what's bad, when we judge other people, when we do all of the things that you know that you and I do, we suck. When we try to work on our good behavior, we suck. And that's okay because God didn't suck. That's what's so awesome. And if the word suck bothers you, you need to get over it because it's true. Because so many times in our life, we trust in ourselves and we trust in our own ability, in our own work to make ourselves right, to justify and to judge. And when I say judge, it may just be comparison judging. I had this running thing, because I struggle. I go up and down, as you can probably tell with my face. I go up and down with my weight at times. So I will kiddingly see someone that I know is obviously heavier than me. And I'll say, hey, am I as big as that person? And it's always other men, obviously. And my kids, when they see someone that's probably appears bigger than me, they'll just say, Dad, don't do it, But, it's my way of helping myself feel better about myself. That's what we do because we suck. And we suck at being good and being godly. And the awesome thing about that is God figured that out long ago when the first humans sucked. When they listened to another spiritual being and disobeyed God. And God didn't curse them. He punished them by not giving them the fruit that would ultimately destroy them. God's so good. He's so non-sucky, if we want to put it that way. And ultimately, when humans keep over the course of time, and all this happens in the early parts of Genesis, when humans keep sucking by domineering over other human beings, by dominating them and controlling situations and capitalizing on the weakness of others, by not helping and equally distributing to their fellow human beings, but taking advantage of other people and killing them and destroying their lives, enslaving them. There's been slavery since there's been humans because we suck. God knew that and he saw that. And ultimately, when that rebellion of Babel takes place, that's Babylon. When that rebellion of Babylon takes place, he divides all the people according to what language they speak. And he says, I'm going to create a nation. And he goes and finds this couple that can't have kids. Only God starts with people that can't have kids and says, out of you, I'll form many nations, many people. And he changes their names from Abram to Abraham and Sarah. They sucked. They took things into their own hands and created their own plan because they're human. All of humanity. Even the good people in our lives that we go, man, they're really good people. They suck because there's stuff that they take into their own hands and they try to, control life in their own way. All of us do it. So ultimately, God in that nation, because they keep sucking at being God's people, they keep turning to other gods. They want to be like the other nations. They want their own king and they reject God. And ultimately, God, when he's dealing with Abraham, actually at the beginning, he says, let's cut a covenant with one another. So Abraham sets it all up. All right, we're going to cut a covenant. And he shows up. I'm ready, man. I'm committing to this thing. And God eventually shows up. And I think the Spirit of God, it says this haze came over Abraham, and it stopped him in his tracks. He couldn't move. And I think that was the Spirit of God. It's like the triune of God. All three persons show up for this covenant meeting. And the Spirit of God comes over Abraham, not to empower him, but to constrain him from participating in this covenant cutting thing. And God says, Abraham, because I know you suck and you're going to blow this deal, I'm not going to let you cut that part of the covenant. And it says that Yahweh cut the covenant with Yahweh. Yahweh represents Abraham in the covenant, and he cuts the covenant with Abraham because he cuts it with himself, that he would be a father of many nations. And, obviously, as I said, those people ultimately reject God. But God, because he promised it to himself, he said, you know what, I'll recut this covenant. And really what he's doing is ratifying the covenant, because I can't find a human that doesn't suck. And God becomes a human that never sucks. And he ratifies that Abrahamic covenant that he cut with himself earlier when he becomes a human and dies on the cross. Saying, he comes back during that time and he says, hey, Israel, you've sucked as a nation. You haven't done what I told you. You haven't brought the other nations back to me. You've actually gone and served their gods instead of bringing them to serve me. And so I'm giving you an opportunity. But I've brought my nation into this earth, and I'm ratifying my covenant with Abraham in myself. The same thing I did with Abraham back then. I wouldn't let Abraham cut that covenant with me. I'm ratifying it now in myself as a human. Once and for all, boom, it's done. And God says in that moment that just by having faith now, no longer do we have to fulfill all of these ritual things, but just by having faith in that act. See, Abraham had faith in the covenant that God cut with him. That was it. He didn't have to act on good behavior. He didn't have to follow a law. He didn't have to do all those things. It was done. And it's a forever covenant. And ratifying it in himself in human flesh is what allows every people group of the world to be part of that. And it stops us from trying to be good enough. It stops us from trying to compare ourselves to others, like, oh, they've got it together, they don't. It makes me nervous. There's a thing going on in our Christian churches right now where people are writing contracts with their church members, and I guess that's a fine thing to do with your organization. I don't know. I think it's dangerous, because when you write that contract, you're null and voiding the covenant that God wrote with us, that we wouldn't determine any longer what's good and what's evil. Leave it to God to separate out those that don't want to love him and don't want to follow him. Trust him and live by faith and love in Christ Jesus. That's a simple thing. That would keep us from not sucking. If we just love God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our strength, and love one another as if we were loving ourselves. That's it. That doesn't suck. I bless you today with health and healing, wisdom and knowledge, power and prosperity, and the gifts and the fruits of the Spirit of God to be evident and flowing in your life. I love you. I pray you have a fantastic week.